Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Gedling series. This is a small district to the east of Nottingham and it only has 12 of them. Mind you, it's got some belters. Let's take a look. Welcome back to Gedling again, people, for the second part of the Bestwood St Albans mini-series, as I'm calling it. Now, last time we didn't see much of Bestwood Country Park. Well, in this episode we're going to be seeing plenty more of it. I hope you've got your climbing gear on as well, because this is actually quite a steep hill I'm standing on right here, so by the end of this I'm probably going to be a little bit exhausted. This is the parish of St Albans. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. St Albans, Place of the Duke. Hello again, Gedling. Here we go with part 2 of the Bestwood St Albans mini-series, and if you're local to this part of Nottinghamshire, you may have already seen my Bestwood Village video. If you did, you probably noticed there was no mention of the St Albans connection, or at least very little. That was by design, because this episode will plug those gaps. By extension, you'll find a lot of what I was talking about in that episode will make a lot more sense. There is no village of St Albans here. The main settlement is actually called Warren Hill. This place has nothing to do with the religious St Alban either. He was the first recorded British Christian martyr, beheaded at the Roman town of Verulamium, which we now know as the city of St Albans in Hertfordshire. Instead, this is everything to do with royalty. More specifically, we're talking about the illegitimate son of Charles II and his mistress Nell Gwyn. He would eventually become the first Duke of St Albans. It was under him and the succession of dukes that followed where Bestwood Park, Bestwood Village and Bestwood Colliery would acquire most of their recorded history. In essence then, this is a parish founded not on its historic physical features, but more on its governance instead. And it's a fun one too, this, so let's get the boots on and let's get walking. We start our walk on Bestwood Lodge Drive, a steep and rather unforgiving hill which runs into Bestwood Country Park. Straight away, we have landmarks. That there is the former stable block associated with Bestwood Lodge, one of the main features at this end of the park. Bestwood Country Park has played host to several services in its time. Here, for example, is the HQ of Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue. Throughout its history, Bestwood Lodge has had a military side. It was an army HQ during World War II, and later the 49th Infantry Brigade Polar Bears were stationed here too. The road reaches a hairpin bend shortly afterwards. Here there's a stone monument, but I couldn't tell you what it was for as the plaque upon it was illegible. Nonetheless, it's still worth seeing, and you can't really miss it if you've come up here to spend a night at Bestwood Lodge. These days, Bestwood Lodge is a hotel, but its history goes back a long way. It's built on the site of the old Bestwood Hall, which was a hunting lodge, the site of much royal entertaining and the source of some interesting local legends. The hall was demolished in 1865 and Bestwood Lodge appeared in its place. As we make our way deeper into the park, which is essentially just a wood at this point, let's talk more about the lodge. It was designed by S.S. Toylon, with towers and turrets, making it a good example of a Gothic revival style building. In the past, it's been called notched and knobbly, and was even said to have the curious quality of gazing through magic glasses at some prehistoric monster. Interesting observation. In the 1800s, the Prince of Wales made several visits to Bestwood and was so inspired by Toylon's work that he employed him at Sandringham House. The more you know. I've got to tell you, something I didn't expect about this place was just how sludgy and slippery this path is. I thought it was like a normal sort of paved road. It's really, really difficult to walk on, I have to admit. Definitely one for the boots. I've got my trainers on because obviously I didn't expect this, but we should be okay. We should be able to get to the lodges without any problem. I'll tell you something else as well. There's been a lot of traffic coming up and down this road too. That's something else I didn't expect, because I thought this was going to be quite quiet. And where they're all going, I don't know, because as we'll see in a moment, this is a dead end. The only place they will have been going is to here, the Woodside Riding School, practically the only place within the park you can legally drive to. We've now left that muddy pothole-strewn path, and we're now on a designated footpath. We've also crossed the parish boundary too, back into Bestwood Village. Cars are not able to access this area. This track, a gentle downhill slope this time, runs through the wood towards Bestwood. In doing so, it passes right through the middle of the Alexandra Lodges. If you squint here, you might be able to see them between the trees. These were also the work of Toylon. He designed and built the Alexandra Lodges in the 1870s as the main entrance into the grounds and woodlands of Bestwood Lodge. They take their name from Princess Alexandra, who visited Nottingham in 1878 along with the future King Edward VII. Together, they opened the Nottingham Castle Museum and planted a tree at Bestwood. Unlike the hotel, these are owned by Nottinghamshire County Council. I'd argue these are more iconic than Bestwood Lodge itself, although your opinion may differ to mine, especially later in this video. This next section of the walk will take us through an area known as Big Wood, which I'm pointing out on this map. That's an apt title because it truly is big. Lots of people pass this spot, so it's the ideal place for a parish notice board. Even though we're actually in Bestwood Village, tick it off. Speaking of the village, if you want to walk to it, you're 20 minutes away according to the nearby signs. This track eventually becomes Park Road, hence the name of Bestwood's main street. For us though, it's an uphill climb into the woods, and if you need a toilet break at this point, this building nearby is for you. Like I said at the beginning, I knew this one was going to be tough going, and it is, because now we're starting to climb a hill again. When we get to the top, after we've gone through the wood, we're going to start descending down the hill once again into the village itself. You can't really call it a village, I suppose, but it is an area of habitation. As we journey through the wood, let's talk about how Bestwood Country Park would have been in medieval times. A royal hunting area, the park was crown property until the reign of King Charles II. According to legend, Charles would often tease his mistress Nell Gwyn for sleeping in and missing a good morning's sport. Perhaps jokingly, as a gift, he offered her all the land she could ride around before breakfast. He was surprised the next day to find her at breakfast, having been out riding early, dropping handkerchiefs along her route. The encircled area became Bestwood Park. Well, make no mistake about it, I've had to concentrate really hard to get through this wood because it's so steep and so slippery underfoot. You wouldn't believe how hard it has been to get through this. But we're almost at the end, and this is going to be worth it because, as you can see, the end of the wood is over there, and you can see beyond it, maybe, possibly, along the line of the trees there is a big hill. We've got to climb to the top of that hill. I don't mind that so much, you know, not being in a wood. And up there's a viewpoint where we'll be able to see a lot of the surrounding area. Let's see if the view is indeed worth this trek through this horrible slippery wood. Bestwood Country Park wasn't always like it is today. In fact, this part looks remarkably different to just a few decades ago. When the colliery was in operation, it was an enormous slag heap, which the locals knew as the Tip. In the centre was a lake of slurry, and there was not a blade of grass in sight. In those days, hearing the sound of locomotives shunting coal wagons was commonplace. Now landscaped with trees, shrubs and plenty of grass, the park is vastly different. The colliery workings are gone, but the enormous hills are still very much here. It ain't half a good view from the top though. It's funny, where that last shot was taken is where that bench you can see in the distance is. That is on the map listed as the viewpoint, but actually it's not the highest point. This is. And okay, there's not much difference, but it's still a fantastic view, isn't it? From up here you can appreciate just how underrated Nottinghamshire is as a picturesque county at times. Okay, now our attention begins to turn towards civilization, and remember, there's no village of St Albans here. The area is known as St Albans purely because of the dukes who controlled the land around Bestwood. The first Duke of St Albans was the illegitimate son of Charles II and Nell Gwyn, Charles Beauclerk. It was the 10th Duke, William Beauclerk, who established the Bestwood Coal and Iron Company. The main settlement here is a suburb called Warren Hill, and it looks like this. Warren Hill is mostly a modern housing estate and has more in common with the city of Nottingham than it does with a village. It can be considered part of Arnold. Let's talk buses next. Handily one came along at the right time here. Both the 79 and 88 serve Warren Hill and both run between Arnold and Nottingham. There are two schools in Warren Hill. One's a primary, the other is a secondary. Here we have the former, Warren Primary Academy, a modest affair that's proudly part of the LEAD Academy Trust. We'll catch the secondary school very shortly. Before we do though, we head down Stockdale Close. This runs around the back of Warren Primary Academy and brings you to a small recreation ground named Muirfield Park. As parks go, this is nothing special in all honesty, but it does have a good selection of play equipment and a nice green open space. On Muirfield Road there used to be a community church, but there is no longer. It was sold at auction after standing derelict for some time. There are now plans to build a collection of 6 new houses on this patch of land, a mixture of detached and semi-detached 4-bedroom homes. Next we dive down Shacklock Close, and this takes us almost to the front door of the secondary school, the Oakwood Academy. Formerly known as Bigwood School after the wood we walked through earlier, this was renamed Oakwood Academy after the actual oak tree that stands in front of the main entrance. It's a co-educational establishment that serves 11 to 16-year-olds, and it specialises in business and enterprise. Oakwood was one of the first in Nottingham to be built under the Building Schools for the Future programme. It converted to academy status in 2015. We've only really got one landmark left, and it's a church. To get to it, we first have to make our way down Bewcastle Road. It's wholly residential and not all that exciting, but it was enjoyable. After all, it was a nice day, and given the adventure in the wood earlier, it was somewhat refreshing to be walking on more solid ground. Here we are then on Churchview Close at the Lit Gate of the Emmanuel Church. We already know from earlier that Toylon was a busy man. As well as Bestwood Lodge and the Alexandra Lodges, he was also the architect behind this very church. The Emmanuel Church's setting is quite surreal, given the apparently typical English country churchyard of shrubs and trees. This is in stark contrast with the tracts of adjacent modern housing. It may now be hidden away in the middle of this undistinguished residential suburb, but it began life as the private church for the Dukes of St Albans. You wouldn't instantly realise it, but we are actually only a few yards away from the grounds of Bestwood Lodge. The much more modern building next door appears to be some kind of church hall, but it's the lodge that once again took my attention next. Okay, once beyond the church, you're onto a footpath which then passes through a small wooded copsey type area. You can walk to Bestwood Lodge from here if you follow the path that way, but instead, we've already seen that, haven't we? We're going this way, and this takes you back to the car park where we began. That has been one of the hardest walks I've ever had to do. There's actually a second path which goes to the hotel as well, and look at this. This is the best view of it yet. Check this out. There is Bestwood Lodge in all its glory. Doesn't it look fabulous with the sun hitting it? It's brilliant, isn't it? Okay, we are back to familiar territory. This is where the walk began, at the car park there. That's the other of the two car parks. We saw the first one in the Bestwood Village episode, and this is the other one for Bestwood Country Park. Very, very welcome sight after walking that very difficult route. You do need boots on to walk around that place, to be honest with you, and you have to be very prepared for all the hills. So yeah, not the easiest of walks I've ever done, like I said a moment ago. But that's it. That's Bestwood and St Albans both complete. Time to move on to the next one here in Gedling. There's only 4 to go. And with that, the Bestwood St Albans mini-series comes to a close. I hope I haven't made this one sound awful. It's a great place for a day out with the kids, but just be prepared for the hills, the mud, and the uneven ground. Next time in Gedling, things are going to get a little paranormal. See you soon. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.